Welcome into the Big Bets on Campus podcast presented by BetMGM. This is the Group 5 Deep Dive, and we are in the heart of preview season. The Sun Belt, the Fun Belt has been strapped on. We went through that entire slog of teams, East and West. We got some divisionless football to discuss here because the Mountain West Conference is on tap, and I'm not just doing it as a one-man show. I'm Mike Calabrese. I'm joined by Mike Iannello and Colin Wilson. I'll start with you, Colin. In terms of preview season, is this when you really feel that football started, or do you need to see the pads popping before you feel like football is really back?
I need the pads popping, but there's enough EA College Football 25 going on in my house when I'm not getting ready for podcasts so that I already feel the pads popping, the stadium pulse running through my veins. I can't wait for it all to get here.
Iannello, we discussed that, the Sun Belt certainly has a chance to send a team to the college football playoff. Do you feel just as bullish on the Mountain West?
Yeah, it's not more bullish on the Mountain West, to be honest. But I'm pretty excited to talk about this conference. I think when I was doing my research, I was a bit surprised where I kind of thought going into this conference was going to be top heavy. And the more I did research, the more I was finding myself poking holes in these top teams and finding myself bullish on some of the bottom ones. So I think it looks like I kind of think this conference might kind of all come together with the exception of, Boise's probably ahead of everyone. But, we'll see what you guys think about that. But I'm pretty excited to talk Mountain West football here.
And in addition to Mountain West football, we have the two little bonus teams in the Pac-2. We're bringing them on over. We're going to talk Wazoo and Oregon State in this episode as well. For those not in the know, everyone's going to play 7 games in the Mountain West this year, and Wazoo and Oregon State are going to be sprinkled throughout those schedules. Some teams catching them both, some teams only getting one of them. It is interesting how it could potentially, at least in this one special season, be a boost for a conference champion or a team that gets a double-digit wins if they are able to win against those former Power 5 teams. But we'll get into that in just a moment. First, a quick announcement.
What's up, college sports fans? I'm Stuckey.
I'm Colin Wilson.
I'm Mike Calabrese.
I'm Maria Marino.
I'm Charlie DiSturco, and we're excited that the Big Bets on Campus brand is launching its very own YouTube channel.
You'll be able to find every episode of the BBOC podcast, live shows, and other college sports content on this new channel.
Not only will the channel be dedicated to betting on college sports, but you'll also be able to find exclusive interviews with former college athletes,
college football power rankings,
and updates on other topics like the brand new College Football 25 video game series and the ins and outs of the recruiting trail all the way down to the transfer portal.
whether you're into college football,
college basketball,
college baseball, or any of the college sports.
We are the home for college sports, and BBOC is the channel for you.
Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the action. I'll see you there.
All right, it's time to hop on into the Mountain West top to bottom. We're going to do it just like the Sun Belt, where we're going to go by the preseason media poll that is now up, and we'll go from the top team all the way to the bottom. And I'm going to throw in some Oregon and Wazoo, at my discretion. We're not going to leave them as leftovers just for the end. I'm sure they already feel enough like that as it is. All right, let's start at the very top with the Boise State Broncos. Spencer Danielson took over last year, went 3-1, won the Mountain West title game over UNLV. They lost to UCLA in the LA Bowl, but they finished 8-6. They played 14 games, 6-2 in Mountain West play. Their win total out in the market is sitting at 9 or 9.5. Their odds essentially at even money to win the championship. As a reminder, we're going to beat this drum over and over again. Make sure to shop around. I've seen as good as plus 130 out in their market, so don't leave any money on the table. Also, a new market this year, odds to make the college football playoff because the top G5 team is going to get a seat at the table. They are plus 450 to make the college football playoff. And interestingly, I'll get into it in just a moment, 600-1 to win the national title. I think that is incredibly mispriced. But before I get into the full breakdown, I'm going to go to you first, Iannello, so I don't steal any of your notes, any of your points of emphasis. I just wrote 3,000 words in the Action Network app about why I'm on Boise at 600-1 to win the national title. So I have plenty to say, but let's have you go first.
Yeah, I think, people kind of forget too that not only did they win the Mountain West last season, they did it despite firing their head coach mid-season, rotating QBs throughout the year, having a bunch of players opt out mid-season. They had half their receiver room enter the portal in November, and they still managed to win. Bring back all-world running back Ashton Jeanty. By the way, we have to decide this year. Are we calling him Jeanty, or I feel like we said it differently every time?
Genty is the way to go. It is important. There are some tricky names in this conference, so we have to make sure we have all our
San Jose State's whole defensive line is like part of the bloodline. So I don't even know how to pronounce any of them. But yeah, they got Genty back, and then they're going to pair him with former 5-star recruit Malachi Nelson. Calabrese, we have been picking the Bailey Zappi Our Guy Award for each conference. Should we just rock, paper, scissors for which one of us gets to pick Malachi Nelson as our guy? Because this is officially a Malachi Nelson podcast. I think he's going to be a stud. Latrell Capel's back at receiver. They bring in Cam Camper from Indiana. I think this offense is going to be nasty. They do lose PJ Ramsey up front on defense, but I think this defense is sneaky going to be the story of this team. They promoted Spencer Danielson, the head coach. If you saw the video of it when they announced that, this team loves him. And they were able to bring a lot of guys back, which I think kind of shows you that people want to play for him. They promoted Eric Chandler, the D-line coach, to the defensive coordinator. So I think there's a lot of continuity here. I think this defense is going to be loaded. Amon Hassanian, 12.5 sacks last year, the leading defensive lineman. He's back. The linebacker, Andrew Simpson. He does everything for this team. You got Seo Oladipo in the corner with Amarion McCoy. So I really like what they're bringing back. The secondary, they might have the best safety duo in the conference with Tubner and Robinson. So the defense started slowly, and then as soon as they fired the coach, it was terrific down the stretch. So I think they're going to win the Mountain West. I think the defense is going to be a huge part of it. You mentioned with the our two newcomers, we have to decide too. Are we officially adopting Washington State and Oregon State from Colin Stock? Are we having joint custody with them? Are we officially their parents now? How's that working?
I mean, there will be a conference official from the state that will watch us as we take them to the park. But yeah, I think this is going to be a part where we are sharing them with Stuck and Colin. And honestly, I just feel so bad for the programs. I think there's an opportunity for at least one of them to have a decent season. We'll get into that shortly. But as it relates to Boise, I'm going to throw this to Colin real quick.
Well, hold on. I just want to say real quick. I think that's perfect for Boise because it gives them two big names, two big brands, both coming to the Smurf turf, which sets up nicely to get Boise a few statement wins. I think they should be favored in 11 games. So my pick here, I'm going to skip the Mountain West conference price. I think it's like plus 110. Give me that plus 600 for Boise State to make the playoff. I think an 11-1 Boise team jumps Liberty. So that is my pick for the Broncos.
When people ask me, like, how deep are you getting into your offseason prep? Usually I go to this little nugget. I was watching Dirk Cutter dial up plays for Jameis Winston and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get a feel for his play calling acumen, his run pass ratio, how he protects his quarterback at times. Colin, I'm going to throw this to you in this open-ended question. How good can this Boise offense be with arguably the best G5 offensive line in front of Genty, protecting Nelson, and the receiving core is really, really big. This is atypical for a G5 receiving core. You got multiple guys over 6'3", big targets, big windows to throw into. Could this offense be the best in the G5? And if so, is that enough for them not only to make the playoff, but to make some noise, in your opinion?
Oh boy, there's a lot of questions here. Let's say this. I hate to come in here and just throw water over all this Boise State love, but I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. There are two things on this team that I love, and everything else I've got serious questions about. What do I love on this team? Dirk Cotter being the offensive coordinator again. He stepped in towards the end of in the middle of 2022, and the offense just went absolutely crazy. I suspect Malachi Nelson having him as a mentor and as an offensive coordinator is going to help his progression because he hasn't had it yet, because he hasn't grown an inch. He hasn't put any muscle on. He looks like a stiff wind could blow him away. He looks like Brett Favre on the field in the spring game, throwing across his body. Looks like he likes different arm angles like Patrick Mahomes. That's Patrick Mahomes and Brett Favre. You're 19 years old? You weigh 170? I'm a little nervous about him leaving the pocket the spring game. I'm a little nervous about him throwing across his body. But then again, we'll talk about some of these defenses that he's going to play. I'm not sure if anybody can expose that. I love Dirk Cotter being the offensive coordinator here. I think he can cover that up. Anything that Malachi Nelson's got with a little bit of wildness with his form. I also love Ashton Genty, best running back in the group of five. Would start for almost every single Power 5 team. 4.3 yards after contact. He created 62 missed tackles last year on 180 rushing attempts. He's an absolute man-child. Nelson to Genty often because Genty has great hands. He had a negative average depth of target, 38 catches out of the backfield, plenty of elusiveness and breakaway speed downfield. That's the good news about the offense. I'm going to wipe the Malachi Nelson stuff aside. I'm going to wait to see him throw downfield because I think he's going to get picked off a few times, but he has the best weapon in all of Group 5, and the best offensive coordinator. So I can't hate that. I don't like the defense. Who is Eric Shenander, everybody? Well, He used to be at UCF with Scott Frost. He used to be at Nebraska with Scott Frost. He runs a 3-4. It's highly aggressive, and he was terrible everywhere he was. All the defenses that he's ever coached have had problems with tackling. And if you look at Boise State last year, 129th in tackling, graded by PFF. Too many broken tackles. I'm not saying that was all his fault as an assistant, but now he is the defensive coordinator. There have been serious problems in the past. Andy Avalos had the same problem too. So 100% of the stats are returning per TARP. They are going to be loaded, but let's ask what this defense did. Outside the top 100 in pass rush, 94th in coverage, 83rd in defensive finishing drives. And the other question is Eric Shenander's always run a 3-4 everywhere he's gone. That's not been their defense here. Avalos has always run a 4-2-5. Spencer Danielson runs a 4-2-5. So Shenander's not really fitting in the cut, but he's been with Spencer Danielson here for a couple of years. So, I think that makes sense from that perspective. Now they dodge Air Force, Colorado State, and Fresno, the teams I wouldn't want to play out of the Mountain West. They have a subpar defense. It might not matter. I mean, the schedule's that easy. No college football playoff, though, guys. No college football playoff for me. This game against Oregon, I projected 21, 22 points. What if they lose by 40? Is the committee going to look at that? I mean, there's something going on with Dan Lanning wiping people, like putting them on the mat and then continuing to beat them with a chair. All right. when he puts his foot on the pedal, he keeps going. And I'm not sure a 40-point loss to Oregon is going to be a good look. Now, the good news is I have them favored like every game after the Oregon game, the final 10 games after that. So, and I have a problem with the conference odds. I make them 14.5% to win. That equates to about plus 580. What's this number? Plus 140. It's way too high. Boise's always overpriced because of who they are and the competition that they go up against. The best bet from a value perspective for your dollar is over 9 minus 150, considering they'll be favored 10 times after the Oregon game. They can get over that win total. Schedule in the conference is a joke. Jeff Tedford not being there means you don't have to worry about them in the championship game when it comes from an experience perspective. I don't like them to win this conference championship in the Mountain West. I'll tell you who I think does, but the best bet for me is over 9. I'm not going to mess with this playoff stuff because Oregon has the ability to end that after the second week.
Before I have a full-throated defense of my Broncos, and I'm sure INL will jump in as well, what are your thoughts on Tyler Stockton as a part of this defensive coaching staff as well? Someone who's been a multiple Broyles Award nominee, certainly someone who found a way to coach up a lifeless Ball State defense. It's not necessarily always just about whoever has the coordinator role, particularly with a head coach who has a defensive background. How do you think that all mixes in? I'm sensing a lot of negativity in terms of different schemes and some of those issues, which I will say, the only thing I'll push back on Shenander was that at UCF, he did create a lot of negative plays. Now, the tackling is true. Some of the numbers in Nebraska were absolutely horrific. But when it all goes right, when you push the envelope, with a team that I believe will average over 30 points per game, you're going to have a lot of margin for error where if you can force 2 or 3 turnovers in a game, it doesn't necessarily matter if you're not getting off the field. Other than that, what are your thoughts there?
Well, there's a lot of different, I would say there's a lot of different elements, ideas inside these coaches' heads about what they want to do. And it's all different. I'm sure Spencer Danielson's going to have the final say at the end of the day, but at the end of the day, he wants to do something different than what his assistants want to do. So are they comfortable doing that? I know we talked about how the defense improved once the change was made. Well, you stopped the offense of New Mexico, Air Force, and I have to see it to believe it because tackling was still a consistent issue. They couldn't get pressure on the quarterback. It was still a consistent issue after they made those changes last year.
I just want to jump in real quick and just say, Colin, to your point about the Oregon game possibly being held against them, I'd argue they just have to lose that game by less than 39 points because that's what Oregon wiped Liberty with last year. And I think that's going to hold a lot of weight in the committee's head too, as we had this undefeated cupcake Liberty team get absolutely washed by Oregon. If Boise State just has to play them closer than Liberty did.
And I want to say this too, like I think Liberty has no shot to make the playoff because of that Fiesta Bowl. Are you really going to take them undefeated out? And we haven't cut our Conference USA podcast, but you go undefeated, your name's in there. Maybe you float up around there. But if they're hovering around 13th or 14th, which I don't even know if they can do that with that strength of schedule, are you really taking them after that performance against Oregon and Bo Nix in the Fiesta Bowl? Does the committee really want that kind of, game being televised on the biggest, showcase ever? I don't think so. I think Boise does have a leg up. They can lose to Oregon probably pretty bad and still have a leg up over Liberty. But you got to pretty much whip everybody else on this schedule to make the playoff.
Before we hop to the next team, I do want to flag, you brought him up, Ainello. He is my guy for this entire conference. Ahmed Hassanin, the Boise State defensive ends. He had 16 and a half tackles for loss this year. He has to go thermonuclear for them to have any chance to create enough pass rush to help out a secondary that Colin is right. They finished 110th in passing defense, 85th in passes defended. They had some issues on the back ends. He's a special player, though, and he's one of my favorites because it's someone who's new to football. He comes from Egypt. He was the top ranked CrossFit competitor in the entire country. He boxed. He was a judo champion. He's only been playing football, I believe, for 6 years now, and he just keeps getting better. He's getting All-American preseason hype from Phil Steele. I think there's an opportunity for him to have a monster year, kind of similar to at Colorado State last year, where you had, their defensive ends, Kamara, where you need one guy to essentially be the pass rush. I think he can help. And the other, person that I would circle and really focus in on is Jeremiah Irby, who comes in from Cal. He was a freshman, second team All-American 2 years ago. He's a big corner at 6'2", and he has chemistry with their other starting quarterback, McCoy, because they played in high school together. So listen, for a dream season to come together, lots of elements need to come together, and college football is all about transition and the lack of continuity and new coaches everywhere. So I think in a regular year, you could start to really poke holes in this Boise resume. But I think just like everybody else in this conference, they have a slew of new faces that need to work together. We'll see if they can get it done. All right.
Cal, Breeze, question for you. I know everyone, you were talking about how much research you've done into this conference. I will tell listeners too. Cal Breeze told me Boise State is the team he picked for his NCAA 25 dynasty team. So is Hassanian, is that who you're controlling on defense? Are you just bull rushing him off the edge when you're playing with them?
First of all, anyone who plays with defensive linemen is not welcome in my house. That is not a real player on the sticks. You got to at least be a linebacker or a safety if you're a real one. So no, I'm not playing with him. I'm letting him do his own work. Maybe I'll bluff with a linebacker, try to take up an A gap here or there. All right, let's hop to the second team, at least in the preseason poll. And for my money, this is where it immediately gets interesting in terms of a team continuing to rise and to challenge Boise and to make this a year-long race that is something to keep an eye on from a national perspective. UNLV, year 2 for Barry Odom, 9-5 last year. They finally break through. They win over 7 games for the first time since the mid-'80s. They go 6-2 in conference. They go to the title game. They lay an egg against Boise. Unfortunately, they lose to Kansas in a bowl game shootout. Their win total, this is what surprised me, 7 or 7.5. Their odds to win the conference, once again, shop around, but 6-1 at a lot of books, 33-1 to make the college football playoff. This team, I still believe, has an it factor to be able to take it to the next level. And let's keep in mind, they host on a Friday night at Allegiant Stadium, October 25th. Boise State comes to town. So they have an opportunity to get their win of the year in that spot. Now, let's get into quarterbacks, and this is where I'm going to bring Colin in. Matthew Sluka from Holy Cross, Haj Malik Williams from Campbell are in a fall camp battle for the QB1 spot. Both possess ideal dual threat abilities to run this go-go offense. You want to be able to hurt teams with your legs, and you want to be accurate in the downfield passing game. Now, Sluka was a Walter Payton Award finalist at Holy Cross. He had nearly 1,300 yards rushing. If you just watch his highlight tape, he burned a lot of teams with his legs and was really improved in terms of his accuracy over his time starting at the FCS level. So when I think about a Brennan Marion offense, he is the quarterback that I would prefer to match with a Ricky White, a Jaden Thomas to hand off to. Jaden Thomas, by the way, a freshman All-American. But let me stop here. I know that you are high on Haj Malik Williams. Do you think he wins the job, or is this just an embarrassment of riches at a G5 level to say either one who wins it is going to put UNLV in a good position to compete all year long?
Roll humps. If you don't know who Haj Malik Williams is, we will go back to 2021. The Action Network, all of us as a crew, hopped on Campbell first 4 games of the season because they were covering darlings. Why? Because Haj Malik Williams is the craziest thing to ever hit FCS football, everywhere from the air to the ground. He ends his Campbell career 44 touchdowns to 16 INTs, 1,000 yards of scrambling, and 500 yards on designed runs. He can absolutely run the go-go of Brennan Marion, but you're right, Sluka, and I love Haj Malik Williams. He is my player here in the conference because I have an emotional attachment to how much money this guy won me back in 2021. But when you put on the tape of Matthew Sluka, holy cow, Holy Cross almost beat Army and Boston College last year. He was a big part of it. And like you said, Calabrese, it's all about the rushing game. He's a 5th-year senior, but in his career, he has 38 touchdowns on the ground. A quarterback has created 214 missed tackles. That's insane. Running backs don't do that in their entire career. They don't even get close to that. I've never seen a quarterback create that many missed tackles. And then on this offense, and I don't know who wins, right? Between Sluka and Malik Williams. My guess is they both play. There's been so many injuries at the quarterback position over the years with UNLV. I think they're going to need them both at some point. So I'm not sure who wins. I'm not sure which one makes a higher ceiling, to tell you the truth. But what does matter, these guys get Ricky White back. Ricky White returns. He could win the Blitikoff if he actually played for a national championship contender that made the playoff. Most explosive grade in all of PFF of targets over 4 yards per route run. Most explosive target in college football is coming to these two quarterbacks on the go-go offense. I mean, if you want me to finish it up, I can, because Odom has gone back to Arkansas. Not only did he need players in this defense, he went and got his locker room leader from the Razorbacks and Jalen Catalon. Jalen Catalon hurt last year with Texas, didn't get a lot of playing time. He does have the injury bug, but he is a captain on this team day one. Linebacker Jackson Woodard, one of the best in Mountain West Conference. He's in his second year, led the team with 71 tackles last year, and edge Jalen Dixon is back, second team All Mountain West. The defense really needed to pick it up last year. Secondary returns a couple of good players. They were top 40. They slipped inside the top 40 in on-target rate allowed. If you don't know what that is, how many times are you hitting your wide receivers, your tight ends, and in stride in their numbers, and they're going? UNLV's defense was good enough to get into the top 40 and not allowing opposing quarterbacks to hit their targets in stride in their numbers. So they are progressing under Odom, who always plays the 3-3-5, max protects against explosives. It's a tough Mountain West schedule, not like Boise. Boise has a soft schedule. UNLV, I mean, they got Boise, they got Fresno and Allegiant, they got a non-con against Houston. They're playing Kansas on a soccer field. Children's Mercy, we'll see what that's all about. And they have a trip to Hawaii, would generally be tricky, but they do come off of a bye week. I'll throw it back to you guys. This is my pick to win the Mountain West. I have 5-1 in pocket. I know that's falling down. I know there's a lot of love coming out. You cannot tell me these aren't the two best quarterbacks in the conference. I love this team so much. I love Barry Odom. Love the go-go.
Ainello, before I bring you in, I'm going to say this. From a conference perception standpoint, it would be really helpful if UNLV could get 2 wins against Houston on the road, Kansas, and they also host Syracuse all in the first 5 weeks. I think this is a team that was lucky to bring in 2 phenomenal FCS quarterbacks who are plug and play, who are ready to go. And if one slips or gets injured, the other one is right there. By the way, Sluka, his last 4 games against FBS, playing up to FBS opponents, 560 rushing yards. The guy is a dog. So I can't wait to see him in this offense and all the machinations that, Marion can dream up to get him in an open space. But is the defense good enough for it to matter? Because last year, particularly in that title game against Boise, that was a rough watch. It felt like they were a boxer who had a plan, but then got punched in the mouth and forgot how to essentially play football. Does that memory stick with you as well as the Kansas Bowl game where they got shredded, or are you optimistic on the run and Rebs?
Pardon me?
Are you optimistic on the run and Rebs?
So kind of, but not completely. First of all, I don't think this is the second team we should have been talking about here. I'll just throw that out. I don't even think they have the second best odds. I think Fresno has better odds, but we'll talk about them. Here's what scares me about the defense is they took a very fitting for Las Vegas approach last season, and they had a risk-it-all defense. They led the Mountain West with 27 turnovers forced last year, but they also allowed a whopping 87 plays of 20-plus yards, the most in the conference by a lot. So they were very boom or bust, again, very fitting for Vegas. So I'm interested to see if that's the approach they continue to take. Do they want that risk it for the biscuit defense, or do they kind of dial it back a little bit? I love what you guys were saying about the quarterbacks, especially because Colin stole a lot of my thunder, because Ricky White is my guy for this conference because he does not get enough credit. Look, we'll talk about Torrey Horton. I feel like everyone knows Torrey Horton. No one talks about Ricky White. This is a guy who started his career at Michigan State for 2 seasons, including setting a Michigan State freshman record with 196 receiving yards and a touchdown in the Big House against Michigan. He then transferred to UNLV in 22 to play with his high school teammate Harrison Bailey. He led the team in receiving despite not really playing with Bailey. He caught passes from 3 different quarterbacks. He was rotating all year. Bailey was the fewest he had catches from. So the fact that he even stuck at UNLV, and then of course he breaks out last year, over 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns. He was third in the country in receiving last year, only behind Rome Odunze and Malik Neighbors. Ever heard of him? Ricky White was right below him. So this guy is a certified dog and does not get talked about enough. All the talk about, UNLV was the running, the go-go, Maeva. Ricky White's a dog. So I do love him, but you guys said it. I like what the defense did. I just think it's the schedule. I actually think this team will be just as good as last year, if not better. But the schedule at Houston, at Kansas, at Oregon State, Syracuse at home, Fresno and Boise, they're both at home, but those are still tough games. Look, I'll be honest. Look at this 7.5. There's 8s out there. Like, if this team wins 9 games again, that'll be remarkable. And honestly, if this team wins the Mountain West, I'm glad Colin loves them, because Barry Odom's probably going to be the head coach at Arkansas next year. So if UNLV wins 9 games, Colin can take him back to Arkansas with him. So I'm passing here. I like the team, but I just don't like the schedule.
I want to throw one thing in before we pivot off UNLV. At Mountain West Media Days at Circa, I ran into the Las Vegas Bowl executive director, decided to have a little conversation with him. I said, "Hey, where's the Rebel roller?" Say that again. "Hey, where is the Rebel roller? I want to know where that damn slot machine is on the field. Why is it gone?" We got a phone call from the NCAA. It promotes gambling, so they made us take it off the field. Now it's sitting in a warehouse. And my first response was, "Which warehouse?"
Yeah, exactly.
So the Rebel roller is gone.
You mean the conference that had their media days in a casino had a problem with promoting gambling?
Right?
Hypocritical scumbags.
that allows me to talk to Timmy Chang on the floor of the book. I mean, come on, what are we talking about here? So it's gone.
All right, let's roll the dice with another team here in the Mountain West. Fresno State, 9-4, 4-4 in the Mountain West Conference last year. Their win total sitting at 7 or 7.5 in the market. Identical to UNLV in terms of odds to win this thing at 6-1, 33-1 to make the college football playoff. The headline, of course, is that Jeff Tedford is out. Tim Skipper, a Fresno lifer, is in as the interim head coach. Last year, they had the inside track to the Mountain West title game, and they blew it. They were sitting at 4-1 in the conference with head-to-head wins over both UNLV and Boise, and then they lost 3 in a row to close out the regular season. Now, even so, this offense still has a chance to be special. Mikey Keene, first team, preseason. At quarterback, Malik Sherrod, first team, as well at running back, 4 starters on the offensive line, and an experienced receiving core. Once Sherrod was the guy last year, firmly entrenched, he was fed. He had 4 games with 25 or more touches in his last 7. That really lines up with how Tedford likes to, focus on one player. We'll see if that carries over to Skipper this year. But the defense lost a lot as Colin puts together, his TARP ratings and is updated throughout the offseason. Negative 4.5 in the defensive TARP. Devo Bridges is back at defensive end after a solid 2023, but this defense has been slowly backsliding in the last 2 seasons from the G5 elite to just really good. So the question is, will they finally fall off a cliff, be outside the top 50 for the first time in, virtually 4 or 5 years? Big Ten bookends at Michigan in the opener, which if there's a chance to catch Michigan, new offensive line, new quarterback, new head coach, new coordinators, sure, maybe throw some couch change on that. And then at UCLA in the final, it's hard to wrap my brain around them being in the Big Ten, but it's true. No Boise, but they do go to UNLV and Air Force. So I'll start with you here, Ainello. I know this is a team that if Tedford was the coach, you would absolutely be pulling the trigger, no hesitation on them. Where do you come down with an interim head coach? This isn't the same as a team in Utah that we'll get to later in terms of turmoil with their head coach turnover, but it certainly hurts them for a guy that has been really one of the best coaches on the West Coast in the last 25 years.
Yeah, you said it. Losing Tedford is honestly the only reason I haven't pulled a bet on Fresno State here. I agree with you. I love Mikey Keene back at quarterback, Malik Sherrod at running back. Jalen Moss leads a really deep receiving room. They might have the best offensive line in the conference. So we saw last year when this offense works, it really works. So I'm really excited to see what the offense does. I think the defense, you mentioned, they took a step back last year, and I'm interested to see where they go. They did lose a bunch, but you mentioned Bridges and Lightfoot coming back. They also bring in Corey Foreman, the former #1 overall recruit from the 2021 class, USC transfer. So hopefully he still has some juice left in the tank. They're getting Cam Lockridge back in the secondary after he missed most of last year. The thing with it's you're trying to almost guess the motivate. Is losing Tedford going to be a crushing blow? or a rallying cry for this team. You know, we saw them, they didn't miss a beat last time he stepped away and Kalen DeBoer came in and they took off. Speaking of, by the way, best wishes to Jake Haener. They just, I saw they came out the other day. He was diagnosed with some rare form of skin cancer. So anyone who watches these Fresno State teams knows Jake Haener, that dude is a winner in all heart and balls. So there's no doubt in my mind he will kick cancer's ass. But we saw them kind of not really fall off when he left the last time. And then we even saw when Tim Skipper stepped in for the bowl game, they crushed our Aggies 37-10. So the schedule, you know, UCLA could be horrible. They could quit on the team. We saw their head coach his introductory press conference. That's not a guy I'm going to war with. So if they're beat up and traveling across the country and getting bullied by the Big Ten, and then all of a sudden they got to play Fresno and they're half quit, like they could pick off that game. They get New Mexico, Nevada, San Jose State, and Hawaii, who are projected to be the 4 worst teams in the conference. So I think this win total likely comes down to at UNLV and then, you know, Washington State at home at the end of the year. So they have 4 coin flip games, probably need to win 2 of them to get to 8. So right now you're looking at a pretty juiced 7.5 or an 8 around there. If that 7.5 juice comes down a little bit closer to even money, I'll probably pull the trigger on him, honestly. But right now I'm just kind of waiting to see, probably wait to fall camp, just kind of see the vibes coming out of Fresno with Tim Skipper at the helm.
What do you think, Colin?
Well, Brett McMurphy and I were talking to Jed Tedford the day face to face the day before this was announced. So it was, I mean, if it was shocking to everybody else, it was really shocking to me because there was no word about it coming out of Las Vegas when we saw him. But then I go back and I ask myself, like, how much is Jeff Tedford worth to the power rating? We just saw Jim Harbaugh sit out a handful of games, didn't miss a beat. We've seen Urban Meyer have to sit out a few games, and Ryan Day had to take over as interim coach, didn't miss a beat. I think the rule of thumb for head coach has always been like 2 points to the power rating. Since Pat McCann and Kevin Coyle, the offensive and defensive coordinator, do all the designs, they do all the calls, I'm not sure this is a drop off at all. Maybe it's a drop off from your conference standing with recruiting and transfer portal. I'm not sure really how much it has an impact on game day X's and O's. Now, a couple of notes on both sides of the ball. Mikey Keene is continuing to shut down. He's starting to cut down his mistakes. His turnover-worthy play rate got cut in half last year. It's tremendously improved since he played at Central Florida. Wideout Jalen Moss is back with 75 targets, and this Idaho State transfer, Shadon James, had 500 snaps in the slot for 2.1 yards per route run, right over the explosive mark that we look for. And watch out for center. I think if there's a hiccup on offense, it actually comes at the center position. Looks like Mose Vavo is going to move from guard over to center. He has 2,400 career snaps at guard. He has 11 at center. So, I mean, it's going to be a long camp. He'll get his work in, but that's kind of a big change. So on defense, Coyle runs the 4-2-5, a little bit aggressive blitz at 32%. He's inheriting a bunch of USC players from the portal. We'll see if they can tackle. And the leading tackler, Malachi Langley, returns, and Edge Devo Bridges are their biggest havoc makers, I think, in this conference. This is, like Ianello said, this is the best schedule of all Mountain West teams. To make the conference game is going to be Ascension. Let's keep in mind, there's only 7 games that you have to play here. It makes the handicap so easy to figure out. It has a good schedule, easy schedule, tough schedule, because there's only 7 games. After Michigan, I think Fresno State will be double-digit favorites in 7 games. They'll have short odds against UNLV and Wazoo, but I love over 7.5. It was one of the first win totals that I hit when G5 win totals came out. I'm not deterred by the fact that Jeff Tedford's not going to be there. I agree with Ianello as far as who's going to make the championship game in the Mountain West. This was right there with me from UNLV. For me, it comes down to the fact I think the negativity is going to get so hot between now and mid-August. If I want Fresno State, I think I can sit another 2 or 3 weeks and get a better number.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do because I'm leaning right now to the over, but I would like to see some better juice on it. What was your question, Ianello?
Did you guys notice, did any of the totals lines move at all with the Tedford announcement?
So the conference future dropped, but the win total didn't move down at all, which tells you, and I think I got him at 9.1. So I think it's the win total's got room to run. And, there are places, I don't call them out unless they're paying me, but there are shops where they offer to make the championship game. And I think that's an even better bet for Fresno State because this schedule is a joke.
All right, we're going to welcome in a Pac-12 castaway from the Pac-2, Oregon State, and talk about the Beavs here. Trent Bray, a first-time head coach, played at Oregon State, assistant dating back to 2012 at Oregon State, so essentially a lifer. He takes over for a team that went 8-5 last year, 5-4 in the Pac-12. They get waxed by Notre Dame in the Sun Bowl. At one point, they had risen all the way to number 11 in the polls, and then it all fell apart. So their win total at 7.5. I think we're probably going to get some pretty hot takes on this one way or the other. 20-1 to make the college football playoff. Let's start with the headline here from Collins Tarp offseason numbers. -9 in the net Tarp. Coach off to Michigan State. Starting quarterback off to Florida State. Best offensive player down to Miami. Only one offensive lineman returns from a team that wanted to be physical up front. 124th in returning production. Woof. So I have some bigger questions as well, but there are some reasons for optimism. So before I continue to pile on here, Giovanni McCoy was a star at the FCS level and a former Jerry Rice Award winner that's given to the top freshman of the FCS level. He's in at quarterback. He's not a statue, but he's not a big runner either. He's somewhere in between. And he played pretty well in his 2 starts against FBS teams last year at Nevada and Cal. But he needs to be really good for them to go over this win total, in my opinion. When you look at the schedule, Idaho State, Nevada, we'll chalk those up as easy wins. Then they should win at home against Purdue, Colorado State, San Jose State. So we're at 5 wins, and this is where it gets a little bit dicey. The other 7, Oregon, UNLV, Wazoo, all at home. Now let's talk about the road trips. At San Diego State, at Cal, at Air Force, at Boise. There's a lot of teams on that list that can really run the ball, and this front 7 is completely brand new. I'm pulling the trigger under 7.5. I had it circled. I was like, as soon as it pops up to 7.5 from 7, I'm going under. I don't mind laying some juice, maybe up to, let's call it -130. The Beavs are a team that I was very bullish on last year. They were, built up by a consummate program builder in Jonathan Smith, and then all the pieces fell apart. Teams falling apart, teams being built, it used to take years in college football. It can happen in an instant now, particularly when the music stops and you don't have a conference affiliation anymore and no seat at the table. So I'm out on the Beavs this year. What do you think, Ainella?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't actually have a hot take. I am much more eager to fade the other adopted son of ours. So it's good that, one of us will we'll each hate our adopted son a little bit. I'm actually much more excited to fade the Cougars, so I will cede my time to Colin and wait for Wazoo to talk about them.
Yeah, I mean, this team is a complete rebuild. Washington State isn't as much of a rebuild, but this one is from a coaching perspective, from a player perspective. We've wiped the chalkboard clean. We're ready to start writing again. There are things that I like about this team. Ryan Gunderson comes in as the offensive coordinator. He was the quarterback coach at UCLA, and DTR completely changed his turnover-worthy play rate the second Gunderson got there. So from a quarterback perspective, I like who they got. Can he call plays? I don't know. Can he, can he get this Oregon State offense to be in a spread versus the heavy, rush, the heavy rush initiative that they've had there for years, although that entire team is gone. I got him 37% back on offense. Don't know. Now on defense, Bray promoted, from within for his defensive coordinator with Keith Hayward, lowest TARP of all FBS teams. And there's a 2-4-5. There's a heavy tendency for man coverage here, so you can give up explosives. Blitz is at a really high 35% rate, which Trent Bray did last year. But you don't have the horses anymore. So does that bring your aggressive blitz scheme down a little bit? One returning starter? Oregon State's projected for me to be favored in 8 games, but some of those are really, really, really tight because I have them at about 7.8 for a win total. But I do not take overs on new coaches, new schemes, new everything, one returning starter. No thanks. I'm out.
I think it's also important. You don't want to get too far into what's going on between the ears for people, but there's been so much negativity and this feeling like you essentially, when you were recruited by this school years ago, when Oregon State sends you that first letter in the mail, I get to play in the Conference of Champions. If we win it, we go to the Rose Bowl. And now there's not a direct path anywhere. And if things start going bad in September and October, I think it's just human nature to be like, for who, for what? I'll just go to the portal. I'm out of here. This didn't work. So I think this is a team to monitor very closely week to week to see what that quit factor looks like. And sometimes it can go in the opposite direction. Sometimes it's like, the hell with everybody. Let's band together and play like our hair's on fire. So it's a team I'm going to keep an eye on from a week to week playing basis. But in terms of what they bring back, how can you have faith in what they're going to put on the field at this point where we sit at 7.5? I think that's just too rich. So I'm on the under there. All right, let us now turn to the Air Force Academy. Unlike a first-year head coach, we got year 18 of the Troy Calhoun experience, 130-82, 8 bowl wins, a 22nd finish in the polls in 2019. He's won double-digit games 4 times since 2016. But last year, it was unfortunate with Larrier getting hurt because it seemed like they had something special brewing. They end up going 9-4, 5-3 in conference, and a bowl win over James Madison. Their win total sit pretty appropriately, in my opinion, 6.5, 7 in the market. Their odds to make the title game, to win the conference, 15-1, 60-1 to make the college football playoff. Now, new quarterback, brand new offensive line. John Busha isn't as fast as Larrier was. No one was, by the way. He was a track legend at Air Force. He was the outdoor and indoor 200-meter champ in the Mountain West Conference, second fastest time in Air Force history in the 200 meters at 20.95 seconds. But Busha has the potential at least to be a better passer downfield. The secondary should be really good again. 2 big 6'2" and 6'4" starting cornerbacks. And that's important because if you look at the way that they set up defensively, they like to leave those guys on islands and focus on shutting down the run, but not a lot of experience in their front 6. Luckily, they have winnable games early to gain some experience. Merrimack, San Jose State at home, then a road game at Baylor, at Wyoming versus Navy. You come out of that 4-1 or 3-2, another bowl game, potentially flirting with 7 or 8 wins, I think is on the table. There's 4 or 5 winnable games down the stretch as well when you look at the schedule. Colin, I'll go to you first on an Air Force team that usually we know what we're going to get. It's not the same as looking at other teams where it's like, oh, there's new pieces moving in. They constantly have to refresh their offensive line. They go from having a ton of experienced 4 and 5 starters to a brand new line. It seems like every 3 or 4 years. So this is a refresh. The staff knows what they're doing. Calhoun knows what he's doing. Are you a believer in them, or is this a situational spot where you're going to pick some spots on the Falcons this year?
Well, I mean, the one thing that's very characteristic about Air Force was the number of turnovers last year. They lost 11 fumbles on the season. It's the worst turnover margin that Air Force has had since 2017. So you have to ask, does that get corrected? Because generally it's never a problem. It was kind of new to see that happen. You go to the quarterback, John Bush is expected to start. He only had 19 passing attempts. So we have no clue if he's the kind of guy that likes to throw the ball on the carpet. 1,000 rushing yards during his senior year of high school. So you're going to see Busher run the triple. He's going to be just fine doing it. But really, if you're going to handicap the Air Force offense, which has 32% returning per tart, look at the fullback, look at the center, and let's look at Costin Cooley. He's going to be playing center. Uber important for that fullback dive, which they run more than they do the triple. He only played Costin Cooley. I'm sorry, the center only played 6 snaps last year. So that would make me a little bit worried. Now, Dylan Carson is going to take over fullback. He had 493 yards last year and 4 yards after contact. That tells me he's hitting the A-gap hard, and he's making it past that first initial hit from the defensive line. So that is good news. I think it all just comes down to, are you able to run the system? We don't know with Busha. We don't know if this center is going to be experienced enough to create those holes for our fullback. A lot of questions here for me. Defensive side, I have even more questions. 13% returns from an experience perspective. I think the lowest in all of G5. They're going to be favorites over Merrimack, but half the schedule projects within a touchdown both ways. It is extremely hard to play a win total when you've got a bunch of spreads within 6 points. Wyoming and Fresno are built to stop the fullback dive. You really just go down the schedule and you say, do I have defensive interior to stop the A gap? And some of these teams, Fresno, Wyoming, they are completely built to stop that. I'm taking the under here. I believe I have them projected at 5.6. Under 6.5 is at plus money. I'll take that all day. I think their ceiling is 6 wins. If they have turnover regression, they come back to the norm. 6 wins is what they are.
Question about Mountain West Media Days for you, Colin. Was anyone offering free drinks to Ken Niumatalolo to say, how do we stop the option? We got an option expert here in the conference. You're not running it anymore, open secrets, or was he pretty tight-lipped about that?
It was kind of interesting because San Jose State is not going to run the option, which we'll get to. But were they serving drinks? The answer is yes. The Arizona Bowl Snoop Dogg Gin and Juice executives were there, and I got to sip every single one of those gin and juice products. So yes, there was drinking, but nobody was offering it to Air Force and Ken at San Jose State.
All right, speaking of drinking, you drinking the Kool-Aid Inello on Air Force, or is this a full pass year after we were more bullish on them in 2023?
I'm so glad Colin went first because I didn't want to sound un-American when I say I love under 7 here. I feel like we just kind of, and they've earned it. The service academies, I feel like, get the TARP pass where it's like, oh, they'll figure it out. It's a service academy. This team was carried by its defense for the last 4 years. And now they have to replace stud safety Trey Taylor, PJ Ramsey, Bo Richter, Alec Mock, Jaden Goodwin. They returned just 3 starters for their defense, and we're just assuming they're going to be fine because it's a service academy. But I'm not so sure. The offense brings back just 2 starters, and they're both at wide receiver, so it's basically useless. You mentioned that like I feel like the triple option is so based on timing. It's so based on reps. That's why we see these service academies pop off when they have 7-year seniors that are 35 years old running the option. Like there's just so much turnover all at once, so many new parts, so many new moving pieces. We saw this team fall apart last season. They lost their last 4 games, and I'm just super nervous that that's going to carry over. I'm nervous about this season. And you look at the schedule, I usually like to get, if I'm going to bet over 7, I want to find 5 pretty much sure wins. How many sure wins are on the schedule? 3. You look at their most winnable conference games, Nevada, New Mexico, and San Diego State are all on the road. So like those are supposed to be your gimmies, and they now become less.
Two of them are off buys, like New Mexico and Nevada. So
like your gimme wins are all on the road. You got, obviously Army and Navy are kind of always just coin flips. That's going to be 13-17, and whoever has the ball last. But after Merrimack, I can't sit here and look at this schedule and be like, they're going to be double digit. They're going to be a touchdown favorite in really any game but Merrimack. So you're getting to 7, 8. You need 8 wins on coin flip games is nuts. So I hate betting anything service academies typically, but I love under 7 here. I don't see it with this team.
I mean, we can just dub over all the nasty stuff we said and just have me say, fly, fight, win. Best of luck this year, Air Force. We're probably not going to be backing you a whole lot. All right, on to a team that we do have some optimism about, or at least I do. Colorado State. Jay Norvell in year 3 went from 3-9. Their quarterback got murdered in 2022 to 5-7 last year, 3-5 in the conference. They got so much better on the offensive line. Their win total set at 6.5. Their odds to win the conference 16-1, 60-1 to make the college football playoff. This was our darling last year. So many of us bet over on the win total. At least we cashed that. There was some just heartbreaks.
Clay Millen was your guy last year. Clay Millen was the Mountain West our guy.
He was. We'll get to Braden Fowler Nicolosi in a moment. Just for the post-mortem here on the Rams, they lose in double overtime to Colorado. That was a gut punch. They mount an insane comeback win over Boise. I was like, we're back, baby. Then they lose by 2 at UNLV, and with bowl eligibility on the line, they lose by 3 at Hawaii on a walk-off 51-yard field goal. Now, the benefit, obviously, finding Fowler Nicolosi and having him, he basically played like a really high upside freshman. Through 22 TDs, through 16 picks. As I mentioned, the line went from god-awful to 59th in Pro Football Focus pass blocking, which is certainly good enough in the Mountain West to compete and have that offense humming when you're throwing the ball to Torrey Horton, the best G5 wide receiver. Obviously, you think it's Ricky White. We can make an argument about that. Either way, those 2 guys are studs. They're very deep at running back, kind of, running back by committee. So if they can run the ball a tiny bit better, this offense should average over 30 points per game. They're at 26 and change last year. Hopefully, with some better ball security, better decisions by Fowler Nicolosi, they score. They don't give the ball away so often. The entire secondary, they're seniors. They absolutely need to manufacture a better pass rush because they can't rely on Kamara and Grady Kelly anymore up front. On special teams, they were awesome thanks to senior specialists and Horton in the punt return game. And when I look at the schedule, the swing game for this entire season, as it relates to the win total at least, week 3 at home against the Colorado Buffaloes, that is going to be Super Bowl vibes in Fort Collins. They win that, I'm feeling 7-5 in a bowl game. If not, that's going to be some issues. So instead of tying my money up for the whole season, I know that's the game that's going to make the difference. I'd rather play the money line in that spot with them at Canvas Stadium. It's going to be a zoo. I'm going to go ahead with that as my official play on the Rams. Who wants to jump in first on the Jay Norvell year 3 outlook?
Well, Colin Wilson loves Jay Norvell, right? I mean, this could have been an 8-win team last year. They should have beaten Colorado. They had a couple of other one-possession games they should have pulled out. And you have to remember that when Jay Norvell got here 2 years ago, they were a complete year 0 rebuild with an offensive line that was all like 5'8", 210 pounds. Like it was the craziest thing ever. He won 3 games. Last year he wins 5. Should have won 8. I mean, they are continuing to go up. I will say one thing we talked about on the offense. Colorado State has to improve on the pressure rate that was on Fowler Nicolosi. 26%, one of the highest in all of college football. They have to get better at protecting him. The good news is all of their linemen on the offensive line list at least 6'4" and 300 pounds. So that's good because Torrey Horton is your cheat code at 134 targets at 2.7 yards per route run. And the defense is progressing for Freddie Banks. They're getting a little bit better. Over 70% of the tackles are going to return. Safety Jack Howell is the most important piece. He was all Mountain West. Linebacker, probably the best unit. They're solid. They projected the top of the Mountain West rankings thanks to Chase Wilson. Then when you go to the schedule, I kind of weaved in and out what I'm going to do with the win total. It's kind of nice that I'm going to see this Colorado State passing offense take on Texas's secondary right out of the gate. Could have some damage there. Could be an over, took it up. There's a lot of things going on in the schedule, but I think the one game that I came back to was Colorado once again. And if nobody remembers what happened last year, I pumped my chest. I got Colorado State plus 10 against Colorado in a game of the year. I'm so proud of myself. That game closed, I think, 23. Colorado minus 23. Colorado State covered all the numbers. That's the good news. I'm turning around. I'm buying this again. If you go off the game of year market, I'm going to take Colorado State plus 7.5. I'm going against Colorado in the spot because it is a major overlooked sandwich hangover spot. Colorado is going to start off their season with North Dakota State, or as Dion said at Big 12 Media Days, can't we get a layup? Who scheduled this? The next week, he's got to go and play Nebraska and what's going to be a grind. What's Colorado State doing? Oh, they're hanging out playing Northern Colorado. I'm not sure why they didn't get the School of Mimes on there. And then if you look at Colorado, when they play this game, they got overlooked to Baylor the following week. Plus, I was told at Big 12 Media Days, Dion does not care about Colorado State. He doesn't understand the rivalry. He doesn't understand what it means to the Buffaloes and to the Rams and to the community, and that it's not important to him. So that makes it an even bigger sandwich spot. I'll take Colorado State plus 7.5. I'll be happy to see Fowler Nicolosi just throw all over Shiloh and Travis Hunter. We'll see how it goes, but I like that game of the year.
Money
You're not
line
worried
for
about
me on that one.
You're not worried about the Travis Hunter revenge game?
Come on.
That was the dirty hit that sent him out. So I wouldn't.
Hey, they patched it up. They did like a social media post together. They were walking hand in hand. I think it's all good. It's all
Yeah,
water.
trust me, they love each other. Yeah, trust me, those coaching staffs love each other. I heard it from both of them.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same spot as you guys, where I overall like the team, but just couldn't get to the win total over. I'm pretty excited about the offense, 9th in the country in passing last year. You mentioned kind of the step Fowler Nicolosi took. Obviously, Torrey Horton is an NFL player playing in the Mountain West. The good thing that I liked about, you kind of mentioned the running back by committee. I expect the lead guy to be Justin Marshall, who redshirted last year as a true freshman, but he played the final 3 games once he kind of was able to establish that redshirt. In the final 3 games, he rushed for 119 yards, 98 yards, and 94 yards. So this is a true freshman who came on the scene after sitting on the bench for 9 games and just went off. So I'm really excited to see what Justin Marshall does, taking over this running back committee. And yeah, the defense was so bad last year. Gave up the game-winning score in the final minute 3 times. Obviously, you're not going to replace Kamara, but Colin mentioned it. Jack Howell and Henry Blackburn make a great safety duo. So I think the whole season comes down to, can Fowler Nicolosi just cut down on those 16 interceptions? But the good sign is, when you really break it down, he had 11 picks in the first half of the year and just 5 in the second half. So we did see him get better as the year got on, did a better job protecting the football. So I want to back this team so badly. I'm not really necessarily going to specifically jump on the Colorado train. But you look at a lot of those kind of conference coin flip games, Air Force, Utah State, San Jose State, like those are spots I'm definitely going to be looking to back Colorado State. Honestly, I kind of hope that they lose to like Texas, Colorado, Oregon State early, and then I can get a better number on them, San Jose State and at Air Force. I just mentioned I'm down in Air Force, so I'll be looking to back the Rams in like that game specifically, and probably a couple more throughout the slate. So they're definitely a buy-on team, but nothing from a future perspective.
One thing I'll say positively, because I think there's just so much negativity around Coach Prime. He's an easy target. He doesn't mind popping off and taking on all comers when it comes to running his mouth. He has made the Rocky Mountain Showdown a real game with juice. I'm just going to say thank you. I really appreciate that. The fact of the matter is, neither of those teams are going to sniff the college football playoff, and that is appointment television there for me in week 3. So I appreciate it, Coach Prime. Thank you for your service. On to Wyoming. First-year head coach Jay Sauvel. 3 years as defensive coordinator at Wyoming. The win total sitting at 6.5. Odds to win the conference at 13-1, 80-1 to make the college football playoff. A farewell to Craig Bohl. What a coach. What a man. Perfect for Wyoming. He looked the part. His teams were salty. They ran the ball. They played good defense. He won 3 straight national titles at North Dakota State. He took the Pokes to 6 bowl games in 10 years. He found Josh Allen and coached him up and sent him on his way to NFL riches. I love the guy. As a home dog, he cashed 60% of the time and won outright nearly half the time, 13-15 straight up as a home dog. A great team to bet in Laramie, and Craig Bohl was a big part of that. Now we move on to this year's team, and I expect them to have very similar identity. 4 starters back on the line. Harrison Whaley will get a chance to crack 1,000 yards for the first time in his career, which I was surprised when I saw that because he enters with almost 2,900 career rushing yards, but he always gets banged up and he doesn't quite make it, to the full season. Evan Svoboda will manage this offense. He's going to use his legs when he can. When I look at the defense, they were solid last year. They bring back 8 starters, including super seniors Jordan Bertinoli at tackle. Secondary returns a lot of experience, and they continue to play really well at home after going 7-0 in Laramie. Impressive wins over Texas Tech, App State, Fresno, and a drubbing of Hawaii late. Toss in a great kicker, and I think this team is primed to win a lot of close games again. Schedule-wise, they go to Arizona State and Wazoo. They host BYU, Boise, and San Diego State. If they can win 2 of those 5, I love them over 6.5. I'm going to kick it to you first, Colin. What are your thoughts on the Pokes?
Absolutely love them. I just wish I had a little bit more film and a little bit more clue about how good this offense is going to be under Evan Svoboda. He is going to be the next Josh Allen, or at least he wants to. He's wearing the exact same number. He listed 6'5", 245 pounds, only 36 passing attempts last season. So not a lot of film to go back there and check on, but with Harrison Whaley, this is a potent zone read offense and can run a little RPO. Jay Johnson steps in as the offensive coordinator. That's going to put more balance into this offense. He's formerly with Mel Tucker at Michigan State. He's balanced. He runs inside, outside zone. So this heavy rush rate that we've always had at Wyoming, it's going to come down a little bit, especially if Svoboda can throw the ball. Now, there's no changes on the defensive side whatsoever. Sauvel's moving up to head coach. Craig Bohl's son, Aaron Bohl, moves up as a DC. Still going to run the 4-2-5. There's, they return more than 80% of their tackles, pressures, and PBUs. And, Jordan Bertagnoli, he's a name to know on the defensive line. Wyoming was top 25 in limiting ground explosives. He was a big part of that. And the linebacker unit is supposed to be top 3 in the conference. As far as the schedule goes, I mean, they're a heavy favorite over Idaho, North Texas, coin flips against really poor rush defenses in Arizona State and BYU. That's where Svoboda and Harrison Whaley can cook. No Fresno, no Hawaii. Boise and Air Force have to come to War Memorial. I project 8.2 wins and 5 conference wins. I went over 6.5 plus 100. I should hold back. I have this rule about coaches and new quarterbacks and all that, but I feel that the coaching staff is not a big drop off because these guys have all been in house for a long time. And the Wyoming offense was so bad. How could what Evan Svoboda is going to run it all, up at quarterback be any worse than what they've had in the past? It can't. So over 6.5 for me.
I won't hold back. This is my favorite win total of the conference. I love the over here. Our doing research, preseason prep takes a little bit longer these days with transfer portal stuff. Wyoming had the shortest transfer portal page of any G5 team by a mile. They lost 3 total players to the portal, and cornerback Colby Taylor is the only even remote contributor that they lost. So I think that speaks volumes to what this team thinks about Jay Swavel. Normally, when you get a new head coach, the whole team leaves for the portal. Nobody left. I think that speaks volumes to what this team believes in him. You mentioned it. They lose Andrew Peasley to old age, but I never thought he was any good. They lose linebacker to Easton Gibbs, which is really their only loss that I kind of stayed. Like, they return nearly every starter on both sides of the ball. Harrison Whaley, you said, Svoboda, I love what everyone I'm hearing about him. He's getting compared to Josh Allen left and right, whether that's true or not. It's at least a good sign. The defense should be great again. They have the best home field advantage in college football. I know Stuckey would want to bring this up. They have a phenomenal special teams. John Hoyland is one of the best kickers in the conference. He single-handedly won them 2 games last year. He was 4 for 4 in one of the games, and they basically won by that. So you mentioned it, the schedule. Arizona State, Idaho, BYU, North Texas. They could be 4-0. They can win all 4 of those. And then they get Air Force and San Diego State at home, both of whom I'm down on. Also, nobody wins in Wyoming, so those are just wins. And then the road games are San Jose State, New Mexico, and Colorado State. I mean, I'm certainly not afraid of San Jose State and New Mexico. Then they finish the year with, Boise at home and then at Washington State. But they very realistically could be 9-1 going into that Boise State game. They could cash this win total before they play their 2 hardest games. So I absolutely love Wyoming over 6.5. I'll say it. I don't hate them to win the conference. I think that I haven't found that Colin make the conference title game pick. But I mean, they're 9-1 going to Boise. They could lose that game and still be in the title game. So I actually kind of like a flyer on Wyoming to make the Mountain West title game. I'm pretty high on this team.
That's some bold talk. I was not strapped in for a 9-1 at one point in the season Wyoming team, but I think we need it with this next team coming up on the map because it's in the opposite direction. Utah State, the Aggies win total 5.5. Odds to win the conference 32-1, 200-1 to win the college football playoff. It's disaster time in Logan. According to a termination letter sent to Blake Anderson, the coach was fired for contacting a potential domestic violence victim and a witness to the incident after an Aggies football player was arrested and failing to properly report the case. Big yikes. Huge disaster. Not the same as a coach stepping away because of health concerns or just getting fired because he didn't make, the kind of bowl game that the alumni wanted. This is a major issue. And now Utah State is forced to insert a 33-year-old first-time head coach in Nate Dreiling. Spencer Petras is his quarterback, who is exactly who you picture when you think of an Iowa quarterback from the past 5 years. In his last season in Iowa City, 55% completions, 5 TDs, 5 picks, somehow negative 182 rushing yards, all those sacks. On the plus side, they have an intact offensive line, and Petras is a great wide receiver in Jalen Royals. But will it matter with all of this upheaval within their facility? I think this is a potential for it all to fall apart for the Aggies. And defensively, this was low-key one of the worst defenses in the Mountain West Conference. Looking at the back half of the schedule from last year, they up 37 to Colorado State, 42 to Fresno, 45 to Boise, 41 to New Mexico in overtime, and 45 to Georgia State in the bowl game. Very little experience up front, which is concerning. And when you look at the first 6 weeks of the year, I talked about it earlier in the podcast with another program, that quit factor at USC versus Utah, at Temple, bye week at Boise versus UNLV. Give me under 5. I'm not overthinking this. I was already down a little bit on them because the defense was so weak. And now you throw in all of this chaos in Logan, Utah. I think somebody's got to lose a lot of games. If Wyoming's winning 9 or 10 games this year, somebody's got to start stacking up some losses. I think it's going to be Utah State.
I don't hate it. I don't have much thoughts on here, so I'll just go quick and then throw it to Colin. The 2 things that I just wrote down about this team was, I think you have that late firing, and I thought it was a weird decision to promote Nate Dreiling to the interim head coach, considering he just got hired in December. So it's not like, if you're trying to keep continuity, you have a coach that they barely even know. He was New Mexico State's DC before that. So the last time we saw him, he gave up 1,000 points to Liberty. But maybe my favorite transfer portal swap ever, this just made me laugh out loud, was like Utah State last year kind of rotated the 3-headed monster of Cooper Legas, McKay Hillstead, and Levi Williams. All 3 of them leave. And they basically just copy and pasted it. They lose Legas, Hillstead, and Williams and replace them with Spencer Petras, Bryson Barnes, and Jacob Conover. Just an absolute copy and paste generic white guys, and you have the same 3-headed monster. That little transfer portal swap really made me laugh. But yeah, I don't have a ton of thoughts. Defense was terrible. Can't stop the run. So I really just don't know what to expect from this team. But schedule starts out brutal, so they better figure things out quickly.
I am waiting in the weeds because I think I'm going to make a play on these guys in mid-August. So the generation of this firing, it's really quite interesting. So this incident happens with this player who, by the way, was in the portal looking to leave. He reports it to Blake Anderson as misconduct. It happens right before Easter weekend. Blake Anderson tries to get a hold of him, but it's Easter weekend. He doesn't get a hold of him back till Monday. Coach, I was arrested. Misconduct. Kind of fills him in on the details. It didn't really tell him anything, and it happened off campus. Blake Anderson doesn't report it. From what I've heard on the side, there's an interim AD that's been dying to get rid of him anyway. So here we are. There's a huge lawsuit. It's going to take 2 years to play out. Blake Anderson's going to say he was wrongfully terminated because he was told by the players misconduct and not aggravated assault, which is felony. So that's going to play on. Now, as far as the team goes, let's move on to the team. I don't think this equals a complete disaster. Northwestern stripped their coach in the exact same scenario, and AD had it out, pulled him aside. All of a sudden, a defensive coordinator who just got there from North Dakota State takes the team, more than doubles their win total, which closed at 2.5. Northwestern was 3.5 when it opened last year. It closed at 2.5 right before first kick. Same thing is happening here. You have to ask yourself, is Utah State going to be okay without Blake Anderson? You have Kyle Safau running the offensive coordinator. He's been with Anderson since before the Arkansas State day, since 2017. 0 changes expected on staff. Now, Spencer Petras does come in, but so does our favorite pig farmer. Bryson Barnes is here from Utah. They're going to battle it out. Although the staff did tell me at Mountain West Media Days that Spencer Petras's arm is a sight to be seen, and they've got their eyes on him to do a lot of great things. And I'm just like, well, I've seen this at Iowa. Their wide receivers, Jalen Royals and Micah Davis, they're both over 2.1 yards per route run. So there is a semblance of a passing attack here, if not anything else. Now, Dreiling was multiple at New Mexico State and at least 140 defensive snaps, I believe, in 5 different packages, nickel, dime. There was a 2-2-7 in there that he did over 140 snaps. He runs zone 90% of the time. So it's going to be real interesting to see what this defense is now, because 70% of their pressures and their PBUs return. So this coach is extremely aggressive, and he's got the personnel back to do it. I'm not expecting like the world out of these guys. I mean, I only project them just a shade over 5 wins, but the way the market is handling this 5 that's out there is going to be a 4.5 soon. I don't know what the number is going to be as people start to come into college football and the public has their say in moving some of these futures down. They're going to be a double-digit underdog to USC, Utah, Boise, Wyoming, and Wazoo. All right, there's 5 right there. Knock them off the table. Your ceiling is 7. Double-digit favorites against Robert Morris, Temple, and New Mexico. So there's 3 that you can put in their category. You need 2 more. San Diego State comes to Logan on back-to-back travel as a TD underdog. That could be a win there. Then you have your 2 coin flips. UNLV, Hawaii, 3 coin flips. UNLV, Hawaii, and Colorado State. Crazy enough, UNLV and Utah State are built pretty much the same. Same thing with Colorado State. I'm not sure that they can beat them, but all 3 project in the top half of the Mountain West Conference in the defensive backfield, so that is a bad thing against Utah State. Let's just put it this way. At 4.5, I am considering an over. I don't think it's as bad because the offensive coordinator knows the system and he's been with Anderson since 2017 in Arkansas State. So what's it worth? 2 points to the power rating? That just, it's still a shade. It's still projected at 5. So no money down. Don't want to take up a lot of time, but in the middle of August, I'm going to recheck what this number is.
I think that's an important point on coordinators and the identity of the team. In modern college football, coordinators run the show. In a lot of cases, they're the play callers, but also they're setting the agenda in terms of their overall scheme, their preferences in terms of pass rate, run rate, rush rate, blitzing, all these other things. I get it. I just had an issue with them even before this news broke in terms of their defense absolutely falling off a cliff last year. And if Petras wins the job, it'll be, I can talk myself into these wide receivers from a fantasy prop perspective, putting up some numbers. But in terms of trusting him to beat a team like UNLV that you just brought out, I am in love with those quarterbacks. I am not in love with this Iowa transfer. We'll keep it at that and move on. Keep these things moving here on to San Diego State. Sean Lewis, come on down. Aztec fast is the word of the day. They were 4-8 last year, 2-6. Their offense has been stuck in the mud for, it feels like, 10 years. Their win total set at 5.5. Odds to win the conference title, 32-1, 130-1 to make the college football playoff. They have a veteran line. They got a former blue chip quarterback in A.J. Duffy. They got new faces at the skill positions, but I do like Jayshon Polk from the old Kent State days and Louis Brown from Colorado State, Lewis Brown, however you want to say it. I'm going to trust in Lewis to make this offense at least score in the high 20s right away. He's a genius. There's downsides to playing really fast, but there's also clear upsides in terms of a quick turnaround. So I'm going to trust him to get that done for close to a touchdown improvement. Let's call it year over year. Defense, unfortunately, returns just one guy. Tupu Alu on the line. That's it. Eric Schmidt, the former special teams coordinator and edge rush coach at University of Washington, is in. He's dealing with so much roster turnover and depth issues. I'm going to hold off my opinion of him for at least 1 year because he's just got to get everybody's names down. They got the tape on the helmets. They got the names. He's just trying to get on a first name basis with everybody. Got to stay healthy, and it's got to click in the first 5 weeks because the schedule is backloaded. A&M Commerce, at Cal, at Central Michigan, Hawaii are all winnable if they play really well early. But you look at the back end, going to Laramie, home against Wazoo, at Boise, home against New Mexico, which late, we're going to talk about New Mexico. At that point, is Dampier, a threat as a dual threat quarterback, at UNLV, at Utah State, home against Air Force. This is a pass for me. I think this number is just about right, even with an offensive renaissance in year one under Sean Lewis. It's going to take time to get the right pieces to make his offense truly shine. And unlike the last, we'll call it 6 to 7 years when they were relying more on their defense, last year it clearly wasn't enough. This year, with so many new faces, I could be convinced for under 5.5. Are you going to take me in that direction, Ianello?
No, but I would definitely, if gun ahead, you said pick one, I would lean under, but I'm not going to play it. For me, this just, you said it perfectly. It's going to take a year. It's a complete system overhaul. They're going from, Brady Hoke to Sean Lewis, just an all-time culture shock. Yeah, he's got, Marquez Cooper to kind of stabilize the offense, and I'm sure they'll lean on him a lot early, but defense is switching to a 4-2-5 stack and has, one new guy. So I'm super concerned about the secondary. I mean, Lewis has never had good defense at Kent State. So, and that kind of can bite you if you have an offense that goes fast. They're either going to give you the ball back, you're going to be back on the field quickly, or, one way or the other. And if you stink, that's a problem. So I just think this is going to take at least a year to do this system overhaul. So I'd lean 5.5 under, but I'm not really playing anything on this team.
Yeah, I mean, this is an under bet for me. It was one of the very first group of 5 bets that I made. It's a win total. I projected 3.9. There's a huge tempo change coming for the Aztecs here, in case you didn't know. They're going to be top 10. I got to talk to Sean Lewis at Mountain West Media Days. It was nice to A, see him smile. B, I asked him, what's it like adjusting to San Diego? He says, I get the freshest Mexican food I've ever had in my life every single night. So it's good that he's in a better position than he was when he was the coordinator at Colorado.
They didn't have good Mexican food, Kent.
No, they no. I mean, I think you're getting better Mexican food in San Diego than you are in Kent, Ohio, and probably Boulder too. I mean, it was rough in Boulder. I mean, he had a couple of offensive line transfers come in, and all Dion talked about was how bad they were and not protecting his son. So he's out of there. Huge tempo change coming here. There's 6 quarterbacks that are competing for this job. Yeah, AJ Duffy should win the job, but literally all 6 have life here. They got legs. On the defensive side, this is one of the most inexperienced groups in all of college football. They're moving from a 3 to a 4-man front under Eric Schmidt, like you guys mentioned. Complete reset here. San Diego State's winnable games, they do exist. There's a couple of them. Texas A&M, Commerce, they're going to be a dog of tea. And then Central Michigan, Hawaii, Utah State, Air Force, they're possible wins. But San Diego State will be a short underdog in all of those. There's only one real true win on this schedule. Like I said, I project them at 3.9. I'm going to take under 5.5. I did at the beginning of the year. But the real handicap on this team, over. Every single week, we are betting overs because this offense.
Of course you are.
Yeah. I mean, is this not my dream? San Diego State with Sean Lewis, the worst defense in group of 5, combined with the fastest tempo. And who cares if they can score or not? It's the fastest tempo. It works for both sides. We're betting overs every single week, baby. But on the season, we're betting under 5.5.
Love it. Let's move on to Hawaii. The Rainbow Warriors, 5-8 last year, 3-5 in conference. Their win total at 4.5 to 5.5 out in the market. That's the biggest range of any team in the Mountain West Conference. So make sure to shop around depending which direction you're going there. To win the conference, 32-1, 300-1 to win the college football, or to make the college football playoff. Timmy Chang entering year 3. We talked about Jay Norvell, the little engine that could. Well, Timmy Chang's got a pretty similar, trajectory here. 3-10, then 5-8. They're clearly feisty at this point, and they have 6 returning starters on both sides of the ball. You get senior quarterback Braden Shager, 2 quality pass catchers in Pofele Ashlock and freshman All-American Stephen McBride, 3 returning starters on the line, both tackles, and they're 29th in pass protection according to Pro Football Focus last year. Defense was horrible at times, but they were decent, top 50 against the pass. 4 starters back in that secondary of their 4-2-5 look. Dennis Thurman in at defensive coordinator. He was Rex Ryan's DC with both the Jets and the Bills and was on Coach Prime's staff last year in Boulder. Linebackers have a really cool name. They call it the Lions Den. Their position coach, Chris Brown, sends them videos of lions hunting prey. We'll see if now that they're healthy in that room, if they can get into, opposing teams' backfields. We'll see. Travel-wise, you could make an argument this is the most friendly Rainbow Warrior schedule in years because they start in week 0 against Delaware State, which is just the pits. And at home, they utilize 2 byes before their trips to the mainland. So they get a bye. They go to Sam Houston State in week 3 and San Diego State on October 5th. They get New Mexico and Nevada at home, along with not one, but 2 FCS teams. I mentioned Delaware State, also Northern Iowa. Both stink. There's some years when Northern Iowa is feisty in the Missouri Valley. That's not the case right here. That's 4 wins right there. And when you look at the market, 4.5 to 5.5, it gets interesting. So can I get 1 or 2 wins from this group? At Sam Houston, at Utah State, at San Diego State. I feel like I can. I'm going over on the Bows and Timmy Chang. What do you think, Colin, about Hawaii with a schedule, as I mentioned, they're always used to flying all over the place, but they're pretty much as protected as they can be this year.
Yeah. 4 comfortable favorite spots here on the schedule: Delaware State, UNI, Nevada, New Mexico. And then after that, you've got road travel to Sam Houston, or a poorly rated Bearcats secondary. We will talk Conference USA tomorrow, but this Hawaii team, I would say that they have a chance to compete with UNLV, but the defense has no answers for the go-go. But there are enough wins here to go over 4.5, which is listed at -165 in the market. I think, you mentioned all the big players off this offense. What Stephen McBride and hopefully Ashlock have done, especially from a yards per route run perspective, absolutely insane. I think it's important to mention that Braden Shager had twice as many big time throws as turnover worthy plays. I didn't think that was possible when I first saw this kid come up to college football. He stabilized his turnover worthy plays. He was about 2.6% last year in a pressured pocket. That's a fantastic number when you think about being crowded, because it used to be, I think, 7% in his first season. So he's really done a great job with that. They got 3 starters back in the offensive line. I think this offense can absolutely cook. They're going to be dialed in week 1 against Delaware State, although a birdie who may live on the island told me that they're not going to show much because they're saving everything for UCLA in week 1. Let's think about that UCLA team. Complete wipe of everything. Coaching staff, schemes, philosophies. We want to run the ball. Absolutely no secondary. Pretty damn ripe for an upset on the island in week 1 after Hawaii's already had a warm-up game with these weapons on the outside. Count me in on over 4.5, -165 on the season. And as I've already put on the action app, Hawaii plus 13.5 against UCLA, and grab some of that plus 450 money line out there.
Oh,
right,
yeah, baby.
Let's make it a clean sweep here, Ianella. Let's get all in lockstep with Timmy Chang and Rainbow train.
Yeah, I said Wyoming was my favorite over win total. This is second by a long shot. I am all aboard the Bows train. We're riding the rainbow this year. For those who remember when we did our Mountain West preview podcast last year, I'm officially giving Braden Shager my Chevon Cordero Most Improved Player of the Year award. He was terrible when he started, as you said, Colin, and he looked really, really improved last year. He actually flirted with the transfer portal. They got him to come out and stay, which is huge. And I love what they did, where they brought in quarterback guru Dan Morrison as the QB coach to help improve Shager even more. Dan Morrison was the QB coach at Hawaii when Timmy Chang and Colt Brennan, RIP, were just chucking it all over. So they bring in him to help really take this run and shoot offense to the next level. You mentioned McBride and Ashlock, both back, 9 touchdowns apiece last year. And the issue is defense, but I am really, really excited about Dennis Thurman coming in as the DC. He's going to completely rework this defense that struggled giving up big plays last season. Thurman was the DB's coach and defensive coordinator for the Jets under Rex Ryan. He was the DB's coach during that Revis Island era. And we saw what that secondary looked like. I think he has a pretty good secondary to work with here. You got Verdell Edwards and Cam Stone coming back at corner. Pete Munema at safety, who has a chance to be an all-Mountain West safety. And they don't play that 13th bonus game this year that they usually do. Chang said he kind of wanted to nix that, let the guys kind of save their bodies a little bit, which I like, actually. And yeah, they have a good chance to start, 3-1 in the non-con, 4-0 apparently, according to Colin. So, I mean, if they 4-0, we're going to hit this over by Halloween. And, they do have to play Boise, Fresno, and UNLV, but then they also get Nevada, New Mexico, which are the 2 teams you want to play in this conference. And they should be decent favorites in kind of, basically 5 games plus a pair of coin flips against San Diego State and Utah State, both of whom we all just said we're down on. So there's your 7 right there. And, they only really need one of those to go over. You mentioned it. Look across the board. You got over 4.5 with juice. You got over 5.5 at plus money. I personally found an over 5 at pretty close to even. I think it was -110. That's where I chose to play it. Because I'm pretty confident they'll get to 5. And I think if they beat San Diego State and Utah State, then they're at 6 and they're bowling. So I really don't hate any. I probably wouldn't play the 5.5, but if you want to do the 4.5 with Colin just to be safer, I'm comfortable laying 5 at even money.
All right, we go from positivity to a team that you teased, Ianello, that you're not so positive on. Wazoo. We bring back in a Pac-2 member. Jake Dickert headed to year 4, 5-7, 2-7 in conference in the Pac-12 Swan Song. Win totals at 7.5, 40-1 to make the college football playoff. We'll start with net tarp -4.5. New quarterback in and John Mateer replacing Cam Ward. Offensive line was fine last year in pass protection, 74th according to Pro Football Focus. They returned 4 starters there. Receiving core gets a nice boost out of the portal, but they did lose Josh Kelly and Lincoln Victor. Defense wasn't great last year and returns just 3 starters. I think that's the headline here. Pass rush could be a problem again. They only got to the quarterback 24 times all of last year, and they lose 13.5 of those sacks to graduation. Like Oregon State, big emotional question here. How do they handle being left for dead? Because there's no time whatsoever to feel sorry for themselves. Texas Tech, Washington, and back-to-back roadies at Boise and Fresno all before mid-October. That's a lot of quality teams, some hungry teams like Texas Tech that are not going to feel bad for Washington State. Back half is far more forgiving with home games against Hawaii, Utah State, and Wyoming, and trips to San Diego State, New Mexico, and Oregon State. I still think 7.5 is too rich, but I don't want to step on your lines here, Ianello. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd love to like the under here, and I think it's kind of everything you just said about. I have major questions about this defense. This is a team that every time I watched them last year, they were getting absolutely torched through the air, and now they lose their entire secondary. So, I mean, you can make the argument they were losing bad players, but my argument would be their backups are probably worse. And so I think they're going to be really bad on defense. They lose Cam Ward, who he kind of did it all at times for them. I think that's a big loss at the quarterback position. But you said it. This is more of a heart play where their schedule is brutal and you have to wonder what their mental state is of. At what point do they get hey, we didn't sign up for this. We committed to play in the Pac-12 and we got left behind and you really think of, it basically just all came down to money. It came down to, we don't have enough cable boxes in our town. It has nothing to do with how you are as a player. You went from being a Pac-12 football player to a Mountain West cast off, all because you don't have enough cable boxes in your neck of the woods. And you mentioned the schedule: Texas Tech, Washington, San Jose State, Boise State, at Fresno. I mean, if they're starting 1-5, and then they got, I like Hawaii. Like if this team has quit written all over it. If they're sitting, 1-6, getting there, if they after at Boise, at Fresno, you go to 2 Mountain West schools and probably lose both of those games. Like, at what point do you start thinking, all right, I'm getting out of here? With the portal nowadays, you see more and more kids hopping in October. I worry about Washington State, and even if they don't quit, I just don't think the defense is going to be good at all. So I like under 7.5. I actually think Oregon's, and they also, by the way, they play at Corvallis. So when you're kind of looking at the 7.5 with Oregon State, 7.5 with Washington State has to go to Corvallis. So I like the chances of Oregon State winning the Pac-12 championship this year. I don't know if that future bet's being offered, but I would take Oregon State to win the Pac-12.
Even with Big Cat spamming the shark wheel play, he couldn't get Wazoo scoring enough points to win games in college football 25. So if he can't get it done, is there any chance on the field in real life here in 2024 that this offense can be good enough to make up for a defense that has some real serious questions, Colin?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at the quarterback battle. John Mateer, he's been there for 2 years. He's got nothing, right? And then FCS, they went from Brian, they got Zevi Eckhouse, 71 to 25 TD to INT ratio. I specifically had a bet on Florida International last year that Bryant was trying to ruin for me. So, there's some good things happening there in Eckhouse's numbers. They're Cam Ward like without the turnovers. We'll see if that happens here. But I have a real problem with this offense, which is the right side of the offensive line. Christian Hilborn and Fa'ali Ali and Falamo. Yes, bloodline. They both allowed 36 quarterback pressures last year. I'm sorry, 36 quarterback hurries. The whole right side of the offensive line could not protect the wind from getting through and getting to the quarterback. It's pretty bad about the protection here. And then when you look at their havoc allowed, it's outside the top 100. 3-3-5 defense for Schmedling on the other side of the ball. They run a lot of cover 1, cover 3, modest blitz, but They're terrible. 114th in tackling, 112th in havoc, outside the top 100 in defensive finishing drives. You know, if you can't do your finishing drives, I'm not going to have any part of you. And the defensive interior, David Gusta, he returned 16 pressures, was graded as one of the most poorest pass rushers in all of PFF with certain number of snaps. So you have the Apple Cup to play for, you have Boise State to play for. I project 7.1. I like under 7.5 here. I'm not sure they can even get to 7 wins.
The San Jose State Spartans win total sitting at 4.5 to win the conference championship, 65-1, 300-1 to make the 12-team college football playoff. I told y'all they were going to win out in the regular season last year. I want to go ahead and toot my horn on that one. They started 1-5 with a brutal schedule. They win 6 straight. Chevin Cordero is finally gone, as well as head coach Brett Brennan after 7 seasons in the Bay Area. He finished in the top 25 during that COVID year, took the Spartans to 3 bowls. He's off to Arizona. Ken Niumatalolo is in, and I have a lot of thoughts on him. First, great hire for a program like this. He won 109 games at the Naval Academy, took the midshipmen to 11 bowl games. He had 2 top 20 finishes. What isn't coming with him is the option attack. He hired Craig Stutzman to be his OC. Recent experience for Stutz includes times at Texas State, where he served as the wide receivers coach in 2023, stops at Utah Tech as OC, as well as co-offense coordinator at Wazoo. According to Joe DeSalvo of the CFF site, as a play caller in those 3 seasons, the offenses threw the ball on average 57% of the time. So a big departure from the option attack. He has Nick Nash. He has Justin Lockhart, 2 tall wide receivers to work with, very productive in their career. Here's where their questions really start. Who starts a quarterback? Shrug emoji. Walker Eget or Washington State transfer Emmett Brown. Jay Butterfield is a big name, but he's not even on the midsummer roster. And I called the provost's office at San Jose State, didn't return my call, so I don't know what to tell you if he's on campus or not. Either way, the starting quarterback is going to have to have his head on a swivel this year because they returned just 1 starter on the line. Defense was awesome against the pass last year, 16th in passing D, 29th in coverage grade, but they returned only 1 starter in junior Michael Dansby. What they do have, though, is Derek Odom. He's been a Sparty defensive coordinator for nearly a decade with Sacramento State, Kennesaw, and Nevada early. I think he'll coach up these new faces and field another, let's call it, top 70 defense. At Air Force, at Wazoo, at Oregon State, Boise at home, UNLV at home. Oh, and a home game at the very end against Stanford to end the year. Rough schedule to get over 4.5, in my opinion, with so many questions at quarterback. Even Sacramento State is a perennial FCS playoff team. So while I like the coach and I like the defensive coordinator a whole lot, I like what they built in this program. I think they did a great job stabilizing with this hire. This is a team I'm interested in 2025, not this season. Pure pass for me. What are your thoughts, Colin?
Yeah, I actually have the projection on the win total over the 4.5 that's in the market, but I'm just having a really hard time putting any money down on this. A couple of things that, kind of bugged me after my time with Ken Niumatalolo in Vegas at Mountain West Media Days. They're not going to run the triple. They're going to run this spread and shred from Craig Stutzman after he spent time with Nick Rolovich's staff at Hawaii, then at Washington State. The spread and shred, the run and shoot version that they were running. You're going to expect a lot of 10 personnel, more than the standard 11. High rate of passing coming in. Inside zone is going to be the backbone of the rush activities. But look at this collection of quarterbacks. You mentioned them off. I don't know who's getting Nick Nash the ball. Derek Odom sticks around. He was on Brennan's staff. He stays behind. So you can expect what you saw last year to come over. Several different personnels. He's very multiple. He runs quarters and cover 3 to prevent explosive plays. Linebacker Jordan Pollard would have the most experience here in his 3rd season, but his grades were not, against the rush, they were horrific. He's great in coverage. He was terrible at defending the run. There's 0 scheduling breaks here. Look at the end. Wyoming, Fresno, Boise, UNLV. It's gross. There's 2 separate trips to elevation with Air Force on the schedule. That's not good for San Jose State, who is right at sea level. Short underdog in 4 games on the schedule with 3 favorite spots, Sac State, Kennesaw, and Nevada. It's those 3 games. If they can get Sacramento State, Kennesaw, and Nevada, they got a good shot of going over 4.5, but I can't touch it. I can't touch it. Not with what's going on this offensive side, not with the quarterback situation that's going on. It could be a complete disaster and it could be a 6-win season. You just don't know when you have 6 people battling for a quarterback position in a brand new offense that this program has never seen with a head coach that's never seen it. So forget it. I'm out. I'm not touching these guys.
Yeah, it's a pass for me as well. I think, you mentioned losing obviously Cordero, and This defense really turned a corner last season. That's kind of what propelled them to that 6-game winning streak, was how good the defense was down the stretch. Now they bring back just 3 starters, so I think that's going to take a step back. And this is just a program that is extremely difficult to win at. I think Brent Brennan kind of made us forget how hard it is to win at San Jose State. Since 1992, they have only 6 winning seasons, and 3 of them came in the last 4 years under Brennan. So you mentioned the schedule too. They're probably only favored in 3 games, so they have to not get upset. And then they likely need to go 2-1 against Air Force, Colorado State, and Wyoming. Obviously, yeah, we're high on Colorado State and Wyoming, so that's already tough. So yeah, I think I want to go over. I haven't bet it yet, but I would definitely lean under.
Brent Brennan started 3-22 at San Jose State. You can't flip this overnight. This is just a program. You can't do it.
Another new head coach here in the conference, New Mexico, hiring Bronco Mendenhall to lead the Lobos. Their win total set at 1.5 or 2.5 out in the market. They went 4-8 last year, a quiet 4-8 for a team that I think had the floor of potentially being one of the worst, 20 teams in America. But they finished 2-6 in the conference, 250-1 to win the conference this year, 500-1, and may as well be $5 million to make the college football playoff. But the headline is Bronco comes in, won 99 games at BYU, winning 10 or more games 5 times, took UVA to the Orange Bowl in the middle of a rebuild. And the Lobos, I mean, they haven't finished. We just talked about San Jose State. They haven't finished a season ranked in the polls since Barry Goldwater was running against Lyndon Johnson for president. So Bob Davie and Rocky Long, hat tip, they both found a way to win 9 games in Albuquerque. That's the eventual goal here for Bronco. Win 8 or 9 games, move back up to a bigger job. Danny Gonzalez wasn't so lucky, but he didn't leave the cupboard completely bare. Devin Dampierre returns in limited work as a true freshman. He completed 63% of his passes, 6 TDs, 0 picks. He also is a plus runner. He averaged 5.6 yards per carry with 4 more scores. And Bronco, as we know, does wonders with dual threat quarterbacks. Taysom Hill, Bryce Perkins, Brennan Armstrong, the list goes on and on. As a play caller, he has no problem keeping the ball with the quarterback. His quarterbacks average over 27% rushing volume, which is the 5th highest in the G5. So I think there's an opportunity from a fantasy perspective, from a player prop perspective. Just know that when you bet on New Mexico, it's going to be in Dampierre's hands a lot. There's going to be a lot of keepers. Here's the problem. Ja'Cory, Krosky, Merritt, and his 17 TDs, they're gone, transferred to Arizona, and they returned 0 starters along the offensive line. So when you want to run and your prized, skill position player is your quarterback, keeping him healthy for the whole year is going to be an issue. Likewise, the back 7 is breaking in 6 new faces. So no line continuity, no secondary continuity. Oh, and the schedule at Arizona, at Auburn, Fresno at home, all in September. Winnable games, Montana State, but they're one of a handful of teams that can win the FCS National Championship, so that's not an auto win. At New Mexico State, at Utah State, at Hawaii are the next best bets to potentially get some dubs. But year 1 in Charlottesville, when you look back, Bronco went 2-10. I think it's going to be a similar, called a 1-11 season. I'm not going to bet under 1.5. I'm not going to do it to myself and torture myself. But, at 2.5, maybe I'll lay the juice. But honestly, there's just, better ways to spend your Saturdays throughout the fall than rooting against Bronco Mendenhall and the Lobos. So I'll leave it at that. Anyone want to jump in here on this experience with so many new faces and brand new head coach?
Well, I love the hire. Go ahead. I know.
I texted Breeze before I even started. I opened, my computer and I just said, are we blindly betting 2.5 just simply on the Bronco principle? I'm with you, Breeze, where I'm staying away, but I think this team has quiet upside. I think if Dampier hits, he could be sick. I watched him a lot last year. He is very fun to watch. He is good with his legs. He's got an electric arm. They bring back leading receiver Caleb Medford. They bring in 2 Power 5 receivers from Illinois and Syracuse. I'm definitely concerned about the offensive line. I don't know how they replace Krosky Merritt in the backfield. Defense is also a complete rebuild. Davion Combs is their best returner, and he's been recovering from an injury all season, so I don't like that. Team was terrible up front last year. Can't rush the pass, can't stop the run. But I think I'm with you where I'm definitely not betting under on a Bronco Mendenhall team. I also don't want to necessarily tie up my money all year in a New Mexico over. But because of the upside with Dampier and just because teams with Bronco are gonna play good, I think this team has sneaky upside and they won't be favored until the first game of the year. After their first game of the year, I mean, they'll be probably dogs in the next 11. but they're definitely a team I'm going to look to bet on as double-digit underdogs and just trust that Bronco will keep them in the game and that Dampier will make a play late to get in the back door.
Yeah, so I do like New Mexico. But I there's an over 2 minus 120 out there. And there are things about the Mendenhall hire that I like. First of all, Jason Beck and Nick Howell, his offensive and defensive coordinator, they've been with him forever. They know exactly the kind of system that they want to put in. They are great recruiters along with Bronco in this territory. He dominated the state of Utah. He dominated Nevada. This is his area. He started here as a defensive coordinator for Rocky Long in New Mexico. So there's a lot of ties to the Lobos program. I think it's a great hire, and they're going to get it turned around. The question is, can they get 2 wins off of this schedule? You mentioned the offensive line had a roster wipe. I mean, their portal names that they've got are from Grambling, Texas A&M Commerce, East Carolina, and FAU. It's not really an all-star cast, so it's going to have to be all in Dampier. And his legs, he had 320 rushing yards last year. Now, I think when you look at the defensive side, they do run a 3-3-5, and that means you have to have a very good nickel. They do. They have Tavian Combs. He allowed just 6 TDs and 76 career targets that have been against him. His highest grades come as a pass rusher. He is absolutely the kind of player that you need when you're starting up a brand new defensive scheme, and you got to have a nickel back, which would be the most important player that can float around. And, and then there's Demetri Johnson. That's a name you're going to hear on Saturday, every Saturday. He's a linebacker that's got the best chance to create some havoc here. I think you guys might forget just how bad this conference is, right? I mean, there's spots to win. Short dog, New Mexico State. They get a bye before they play Air Force. Utah State could be in complete disarray. And San Diego State is in complete rebuild mode, just like Bronco is here at New Mexico. So I like the over 2, the flat number 2 at minus 120. They could definitely sneak 2 games there. If it pushes it 2, fine. But it's a indicator arrow pointing up on this squad.
Yeah, I'm with Ianello. This is going to be situational play, particularly as they get experience online, experience in the secondary in the second half of the year. They're going to be catching a lot of points. I'm going to be interested against the spread playing the Lobos. All right, we're going to close things out with the Wolfpack in Reno, Nevada. 2-10 last year, 2-6 in conference. Jeff Choate has been hired. Their win total set at 2.5. Odds to win the conference 150 to 1. Odds to make the college football playoff 500 to 1. If we're being honest, Jeff Choate, my kind of hire. Huge success as a head coach. I like that. Head coach of Montana State, taking the Bobs to the FCS semis before leaving for the Texas defensive coordinator job. So he has big time Power 4 experience, big time head coaching experience in terms of success. The defense was absolute garbage last year, with the exception of their 6-0 win over San Diego State, which, by the way, that game film should be put in a capsule and sent to the bottom of the goddamn ocean. 12 punts, only 1 turnover. Jaden Maiden achieved a QBR of 4.1 out of 100, 3 missed field goals, and 0 points in the second half. That's my nominee for worst game of 2023.
Did Colin have the over? Did Colin have the over on that one?
There was just a lot of live bet in the overs on that one.
Over 4.5.
Let's go.
If their transfers in the secondary from Texas, West Virginia click, this defense could be all right in the back 7, 80s, 90s against the pass, let's call it. Offensively, I don't like Brandon Lewis, but I do like Sean Dollars, for the former Oregon running back. Now Chuba Purdy is in the mix to start at quarterback, and the line added 3 Power 4 transfers. Maybe they could be a little bit feisty if they get some continuity and one of the quarterbacks pop outside of Lewis. But let's talk schedule. Georgia Southern at home. Eastern Washington, down year for the Eagles, by the way. FCS football, it's important. You might look at them and say, this is a team that's made some deep runs, Cooper Kupp, all that kind of stuff. Not this year for the Eagles. At San Jose State, those are the winnables. So Georgia Southern, Eastern Washington, San Jose State. Anything else would be a big upset. I'm going to go under, although I do really like the higher. What do you think, Colin?
Yeah, I'm taking a conference win total under 1.5 minus 130. There's some shops out there that offers conference win totals, and I love them to death. Now, listen, to me, Sean Dollars is going to get some backup with Pat Garwo from Boston College. Neither of them have elusiveness. Neither of them have breakaway speed. Neither of them can get to 3 yards after contact, so there's no juice for there whatsoever. What's happening with the wide receivers here? Oh, in the words of John Calipari, I talked to the team. There is no team. There's no wide receivers coming back at all. 0 catches. All right. Tight end Cam Ziedler got 12 targets last year. That's their highest returning producer from the air attack. You go to the other side of the ball, and the defense returns 71% per tarp, 75% of their PBUs and pressures are coming back. They have some players over here, and they have 13 games on their schedule. The fact that their win total is at 2.5 and you have 13 games, 5 non-cons to start. It's pretty impressive about how bad this team is going to be. Oregon State comes in October. 3 games are going to determine the win total. That is that easy. Georgia Southern, Colorado State, and Air Force. And so what you have to do is, can these opponents defend the Nevada rushing attack? Because the Nevada rushing attack is all that they've got. Colorado State has a lower rated defensive line, but Nevada has no answers for the Rams pass. None. Georgia Southern projected to be one of the worst defensive lines in the Sun Belt. Could be a win. And Air Force is loaded on the defensive interior from a Mountain West perspective. Nevada can't even defend the fullback dive. Conference win total under 1.5. I don't see 2 wins in the Mountain West on this schedule. You can make a case that there's some light run defenses they go up against, but those light run defenses are complemented by explosive passing on the other side, which Nevada can't defend. So under 1.5 from a conference perspective.
Yeah,
Is this the bottom of the barrel here, Ainello, for the Mountain West?
Yeah, I'm not fully as down on them as you guys. I'm not playing it over, but I'm not playing the under either. I think they brought in a ton of Power 5 transfers, so it's just a lot of unknown. It's a lot of you're betting on talent, you think, but I think Chuba Purdy does take Lewis's job. I'm with you. I don't like Lewis. I think Purdy's a better option there. I don't hate Garwo at running back. They got Savion Red coming in from Texas is another good back they added. They added a wide receiver from West Virginia, tight end from Florida. Defense, they're bringing in an edge rusher from Wisconsin, a safety from West Virginia, 3 pieces from Texas, led by safety Keaton Crawford. So I think the defense will be much better.
And some JUCOs in the secondary. Okay, I mean that's a problem.
Yeah, but I mean the defense was horrible last year, so I think they're going to be better just based on talent alone. The Nevada defense was trash. So I actually think the defense will be better. I have obviously questions about who's playing quarterback. I have a ton of questions about the offensive line. And it's just a massive rebuild. For me, I'm more down on just the schedule, which you guys pointed out. They play 13 games, but 10 of those teams reached a bowl last year. They play the top 5 teams in the Mountain West, plus Oregon State, SMU, Troy, Minnesota. So they're going to be favored in 1 game. I'm not as down on them as you guys, but I also it's definitely hard to see 3 or 4 wins here. So
and Matt Lubick might be an offensive coordinator somewhere else by the time the season even rolls around. There was a 3-month span in 2017. At the end of 2017, there's a 3-month span where Matt Lubick was the offensive coordinator at Oregon, Ole Miss, Baylor, and Washington from December to March. So he spent his last 2 years with Washington. It's true with Kansas. He's been an analyst in Kansas, but it's true. This guy was the offensive coordinator of 4 Power 5 programs in a span of 3 months. Good luck, Matt Lubick.
All right, let's close things out, guys. Who are your title game matchups? Who do you have winning it? And you can give one last quick plug to your favorite over-under of the win total in the entire conference. We'll start with you, Ainello.
I'm going with, I want to be different than you guys. So I'm going with Boise State against Wyoming. I do like Fresno, but I'm going to go with the Boise-Wyoming matchup. And my favorite win total is Wyoming over 6.5 and Hawaii over 5.
Colin, what you got?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound repetitive here, but UNLV gets to play Boise State and Fresno State, so we're going to determine. There could be this whole Harris poll, BCS poll. We've got 3 teams with the same standing. We got to figure out which 2 are going to make the Mountain West Championship. I think those 3 teams are Fresno, UNLV, and Boise State. I'm going to go with UNLV and Wyoming. I'm going to go with UNLV taking on Fresno State in the conference championship. I think Boise will just tie, lose out from the computer polls. We'll see. I got problems with Boise, so we'll see what happens with that defense. Now, my favorite win total is Wyoming on the over. I mean, I can name so many overs on there. I think there's potential on the offense. There's continuity in the coaching staff, even though this is a new head coach. Not really. So I like the over 6.5 on Wyoming by far.
Malachi Nelson, there's still time. You can eat a double cheeseburger with the peanut butter milkshake and get up to a certain weight level that is appropriate for our beefed up Colin Wilson. If you do, this offense is going to pop. They're going to win the conference. They're going to beat UNLV, who I can't wait to see Sluka or Williams running that go-go offense. I think they are cut above everybody else. Fresno, it would have given me a lot of pause if Tedford was there. So I'll go ahead with Boise over UNLV in a rematch of last year.
We need to get Malachi Nelson on a strict Idaho potato diet until September.
Covered in cheese and bacon and some ranch as well. And then for my favorite win total, this is the year for Hawaii. They're going to get to bowl eligibility, in my opinion. You want to play them at 4.5, 5, 5.5. I think they get to 6 wins. The schedule is tailor-made. This is what preview season's all about. It's us breaking down the schedules. It's not just how good you are, it's who you play and when you play them. So that's why I'm on the Bows. For Mike Iannello, I'm Mike Calabrese, and thank you to our special guest, Colin Wilson. We couldn't have done any of this preview work without all of your exhaustive work in terms of the transfer portal, returning production, leaning on you in so many ways. So thank you so much for coming on to the program. A special programming note as well. If you're listening to this, the Sun Belt is also in the bag. Mountain West now done. Conference, USA next. And as a teaser, are there any teams other than Liberty? You're going to have to listen to find out. All right, that's
No.
it, guys. Have a good one.